Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more buckshot testing, and today we've got another new version of a shell that we haven't tried before, but these shells generally are some good performers, so I expect to see at least something decent out of this combination. But we haven't tried this specific shot size in this shell yet, so we don't know how it's going to do until we try it. But for the shell I brought out here today, I got out some more of the Federal copper plated buckshot, but these ones are the 12 gauge 3-inch 41 pellet load of 4 buck, moving about 1100 feet per second. So 41 pellets worth of 4 buck is a lot of pellets flying down range. So how can these actually do? Generally, the copper plated shells are some solid performers, but 4 buck has been a little bit finicky and a little bit picky so far in our testing. So I guess I don't really know quite what to expect out of these just yet until we try them. But for the setup we've got to run them through today, I brought out the Remington 1187 with its factory stock full choke, which is typically a very solid starting point to test with a new buckshot load. If they perform well through this, then typically we know there's some good performance shells. So we know we've got a good potential setup. I think it's just going to come down to what the shells can actually do. So as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the big sheet of paper at 40 yards. I've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell. And I've got the templates that we can lay up over our target when we go check it out as well. So let's get you guys a view of that target and take this shot and see just what the 41 pellet 4 buck copper plated shells can give us for a starting point to work off of today. In theory, it should be pretty decent, but we don't know until we try it. So let's take the shot and see what they give us. Alright, so that round gave us 1204 through the chrono. The boss claim is only 1100 feet per second, which is typically a little bit lower than what most other copper-plated shells claim. And we do have a 28-inch barrel on that 1187, so right at 1200 feet per second is pretty much what I would kind of expect to see out of these. So I don't think there's anything too strange to see, even though we are a little bit above that boss claim. But how did they actually perform down there at 40 yards? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now for reference, the white dot was the point of aim. The paper is 36 inches wide by about 44 inches tall, and we had 40 out of the 41 pellets in the load actually hit the paper. So we're missing one. But as for a pattern here, it's definitely not terrible for a starting point. It is definitely a little bit more on the broad side, but it's a pretty even spread of pellets for the most part. We were just a touch low, I'd say, on our main core area down there, and we did have a couple of flyers mainly up here at the top, but nothing too detrimental. I mean, when you have 41 pellets in your load, having 3 or 4 flyers isn't going to make the difference. So overall here, definitely not a terrible starting point for us. And with that being just a standard stock full choke, I definitely think we have room for improvement here. Something like the Kicks Buck Kicker full, or who knows, maybe even the Kicks Goblin Thunder 680, technically a turkey choke in the Mossberg 835, could be the perfect constriction for these as well. But for a baseline, that's not a bad starting point at all right there. So let's throw a couple templates up and get a little bit better of an idea of how it actually performed. Alright, so here's our 10-inch circle, and if we put it where roughly the core of the pattern actually is, since I think some of that stuff up at the top is a little bit of stringy flyers, we would have had about 7 pellets in a 10-inch circle at 40 yards. So out of a 41 pellet load, not anything drastic, that's for sure. We definitely don't have much for a really hot core, but that's good enough for what you would use this shell for. And I definitely think we can get a lot better with a little bit more tuned in of a choke for these as well. So now let's swap over to some animal templates and see how this actually looks in a more hunting type of scenario. Alright, so first up here we'll start with our deer template, and I did give it the benefit of the doubt and move it down a little bit since our pattern was a touch low. And as you can see, you would have absolutely covered that deer in pellets without a doubt. And I know not everybody uses 4 buck for deer, but some of you guys that run deer drives or are down in the thick stuff and have to jump them up to get shots at them or something, some of you guys really like to use 4 buck to do that. And clearly, you would have a plenty good enough of a pattern with a little bit of leeway to spare as well if you needed it. So definitely not the tightest overall deer hunting pattern we've seen from a 4 buck shell, but not terrible either. And we definitely have some more room to improve with these as well. But for a starting point, good enough to get the job done, that's for sure. So now let's move over to our hog template, which might be a little bit more common of a use for a 4 buck shell. And that template will also give us a little bit better size reference on something like a coyote as well. All right, so here's that hog template, and it's pretty much the same story. Absolutely would have covered him in pellets. No doubt that's a dead hog. And for you predator hunters, a coyote would be just a little bit smaller than this hog template, and you would have plenty enough pellets to do the job on those guys as well. So overall here, it's a little bit more of a broad and spread out pattern, but it's pretty even as well. We do have a couple of flyers up there at the top that we could tune in a little bit better, but overall, it is usable how it sits right now. But I'm really curious to see how it does when we get to some of the little bit more specialty chokes. I think those might really do well with these shells. So we've definitely got a pretty decent base to work off of here, that's for sure. All right, and here's the wad from that shell, and it is your very standard kind of half-length, shorter wad that these copper-plated shells use most of the time. Here recently, it looks like Federal might be adjusting to a full-length wad with a roll crimp on top, and so far, that version of the shell has been pretty disappointing. But these ones with the star crimp on the end and these shorter wads tend to be the better performers so far. But nothing too special to see. It looks very much normal, nothing stuck down in there, no rips or tears or anything, and I think it did about as good of a job as what it's designed to do for these, so definitely nothing too out of the ordinary here. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that performance right there? I think it's a pretty solid, middle-of-the-road starting point for us. It's not the tightest 4-buck pattern we've gotten, but it's far from the worst as well. And that is a usable enough pattern right there the way it is from a stock full choke. So overall, I think we're off to a good start here, and we definitely have more room for improvement over that as well. If we tighten up the constriction a little bit, or maybe go to one of those little bit more specialty chokes like I mentioned a minute ago, I think we can really tune that in to be a pretty nice performance shell. So I guess leave all your thoughts in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the Federal copper-plated shells or the copper-plated 4-buck shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? And is that a good enough pattern for you right there? Or would you want to see it a little bit more tuned in and tightened up than that? And is there another setup or choke combo that you want to see us run these shells through? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like to. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.